Last week, for the Ed Files, I went into Michaela School in Brent. The school is run by Katharine Birbalsingh, who is quite a formidable figure, and this is the hour's interview she granted me. Nick Gibb, on the Freedom and Autonomy for Schools National Association recently, devoted 2 whole paragraphs to your school. He said, Michaela Community School is arguably using freedoms more radically than any other school in the country. Marking is kept to a minimum. Behaviour is immaculate. The school day has been extended. The teachers all proudly teach from the front. Testing is frequent. The curriculum is knowledge-rich. And the results are extraordinary, as anyone who has visited the school will testify. But Michaela has impacted more widely on the teaching profession. Demand to debate the ideas that underpin the school are demonstrated by the sold-out debates and their upcoming book, which examines what makes that school so different. The freedoms that allow Katharine Birbalsingh to create the best school she could will do more than change the lives of pupils fortunate enough to attend. It will also raise the bar for what is possible for a school to achieve. And that's 2 full paragraphs from quite a small speech, and they're probably the biggest paragraphs in the speech. So from what I've seen, from my analysis, as a free school you have a tabula rasa, so you seem to have taken the best current ideas and research from around the world, and your masthead has knowledge is power on the side of the building out there, and it echoes the KIP charter schools, and you've taken routines and protocols from uncommon schools as far as I can see. You've taken the latest theories from research in psychology about memory, chunking into leaving time before returning to a subject. You've created a broken windows, no excuses policy for behaviour, a thorough grounding in the classics and teaching a knowledge-rich curriculum, the extensive use of knowledge planners with keywords and concepts, learning by heart, chance and response routines imported from the States, the use of extremely young teachers highly academically qualified in their subjects, in their subject domains, and it all seems like a sort of recombinant, educational recombinant DNA, or grafting onto the educational landscape in this country, although I recognise elements from my childhood in the 50s and 60s, by the descriptions. So 360 students, 3 years in, how's it going?
Well, it's going very well, I think. We're certainly pleased with the results. I agree with everything you said there. I'm not sure we only have really young teachers. We have a variety of teachers. I mean, one of them is 47, another one is 36, I think.
Yeah, for me, that's young.
Well, we've just hired another one who is 45, I think he is. So it isn't a plan to only hire really young teachers. And then we've got a variety of other teachers who are 29, 30 and so on, who are, that's pretty average for an age of a teacher. So there are some, there's a few who are kind of 23, 24, but they're in the minority, I'd say.
Out of interest, what have you found that's been the most difficult thing? Now you've set up, now you've gone through all the vicissitudes in the early days and all that. What at present is the biggest challenge you're finding?
I don't know. I don't know if there's one huge challenge which is bigger than others. There's the daily challenge of making sure that you get consistency right, that you get the details right, that we're all rowing together. That's a key thing that I'm always talking about. I don't think there's one particular thing. So I suppose the most difficult thing might be people outside the school who don't live in the community who attack us. That is probably the most difficult thing to manage. The people in the community are very supportive. The teachers and the pupils love being here. And there's the daily kind of running of things. There's always a challenge coming up because it's a school. But I wouldn't have said that there was any kind of obvious challenge which is bigger than other challenges within the school.
Okay, so it's external agencies that probably might present some problems.
So.
Why do you think you have so much animosity pointed towards you? Have you got a theory about that?
I think there are various different reasons. I think what we're doing is quite radical. And anything that's very different, people, you can find many examples in history when people do things differently, other people get upset about it, because they don't want to change the status quo. And I think that's unfortunate, because I think change can be good. It can be bad too, but it can be good. And I think we should all be open to the opportunity of change, especially when we all know that things could be better. And they can be better in the school system, I think. I think we all know that 17% of children leaving our school system being functionally illiterate, or 22% leaving and being functionally innumerate. And when it's the case that most of those are very poor children, we know that that's really not very good. And we should be trying to do something about it. And then we are, but obviously we're not doing enough, or that we're not doing the right things, is what I'd say. Because otherwise that wouldn't be happening. So my position has always been, you have to recognize first that a system has issues with it, before you can try and fix that. And if we kind of willingly go along blindly believing that everything's great, then we'll never improve on things. So it was when you were asking about the challenges. There's always the daily challenges of making things better. We don't think we're the best at all, and we certainly don't think that we can't get better. Every day we're getting better. Every day we're changing our minds about things and fixing things and doing things differently from what we were doing yesterday. Just because, so when you were setting up a moment ago, and one of the deputies came in here and asked me various questions, we were deciding things right there that we didn't do yesterday. And that's because, one, we're new, but two, things can always be better. And it's about having that kind of can-do mentality of how do you make things better, and how can you think outside the box and do things differently in order to make them better.
So it's quite an agile environment at the moment as
Very much so. One of my other deputies this morning described us as nimble. And I would definitely say that we are constantly moving to fit whatever it is that needs fitting on that day. I don't mean over a year. I mean on an hourly basis.
So thinking about this, you talk about in the book, which is quite interesting. It's good that that's been issued now. I think it will give people a lot of insight into what happens in the school. I think it makes things a bit more explicit, rather than people having to try and think or guess or surmise or hear rumours or whatever. You talk about unintended consequences and mistakes that you've made. Do you think at the moment you've got a good enough feedback loop with the community in some cases to sort of determine, to tweak? You talked about, you introduced a computer suite for after school access to be able to do the specific apps and things that they needed to do to self-test, and the parents particularly requested that. Do you think you've got that feedback loop right now?
Well, definitely. I mean, our parents tell us all the time things that we need to do to improve, what works, what doesn't work, and so on. And they're the main people. And the children, obviously, they tell us all the time what's working and what isn't working. We're constantly seeking out their opinions, because it's important to know that what we're thinking is what they're thinking, and if they're thinking differently, then why are they thinking differently, and so on. So we're always looking at the detail, and without that feedback, and it's not just feedback actually from parents and children, it's also visitors. I mean, we have 5-6 visitors a day, tends to be teachers, but not always, from around the country, sometimes out of the country, who come to see us. And every time somebody comes, I'm always asking for feedback. I say, okay, well, this is what I imagine you'll see when you go around, because they're allowed to go and visit the classrooms with children. The children take them round, so I'm not taking them round. And so I'm always really interested to hear whether what I imagine they're going to see is what they actually see. And if someone's a particular expert at something, we get a teacher who's an English teacher or a French teacher, or we get... Doug Lemov came to visit us, and so obviously we've used a lot of his ideas from his book, Teach Like a Champion. So I was asking him, okay, I want you to go around and see, do you see what you imagine you would want to see when those techniques are being used? So it depends on who comes. The other thing I do with visitors is that if they visited when we just had year 7, we now have year 7, 8, and 9. So then if they come back when we have year 9, I say, okay, so I want you to remember what it was like when we just had year 7, and I want you to take the temperature for me now. Is it still the same? What are the differences that you notice? Because I'm aware of the fact that, the whole frog and boiling water thing, you don't necessarily see things if you're in it, right? So I think visitor feedback is really, really important from that perspective.
Okay, that's good. Now, a rather more difficult one. Your critics think you teach in an authoritarian environment. So why do you think poor disadvantaged students need to be taught in a highly controlled environment like this?
Okay, so you use the word authoritarian.
Yeah, critics might say that. It's not me particularly.
And then you move to, say, a structured environment, and I would say they're two very different things. I would say that we are not authoritarian. We have authority, but that's a different thing. And we hold authority in a structured environment. I think it's not just inner city kids. I think all children need to be in a structured environment. I think children benefit most and succeed most when they are in structure and they enjoy the structure. They feel they know the direction they're going in. They feel supported. That's how you support them. That's how you love them, by giving them the structure, and they love you back for it. Our children love us, and we love them, and they're really, really happy, and they're much happier than they were at their primary schools. And every single one of them, whether they were a good kid or a bad kid before, notice I say before, because they're not bad here. They're lovely, and the reason why they're lovely is precisely because we get them to behave. And they want that. They want to be put in a structured environment which supports them behaving, because they can be better, because we can all be better. And when the expectations are high, everyone rises to those expectations.
But at the same time, you said in your chapter, when parents push back, you say, usually the more middle class the family, the more likely they are to reject what is an offer at Michaela. Why did you say that? Why? Why do you think?
Because middle class parents, I don't know really. I don't know why they wouldn't like the structure. I think it's great for children, but I think that when you live in poverty, when you live in the inner city, when you see the trouble that kids get into on a daily basis, you're scared for your children. And structure is something that you seek out for them, either because you don't want your own child to be bullied, or because you don't want your child to turn into a bully. Or because they're being unruly elsewhere, and you think, gosh, if only they had that structure, I know he could do it. I know he could be better than this. So there's that. If you haven't had those experiences, and if you have kind of preconceived notions about authoritarian or about an environment that is you imagine would be restrictive, right? So you imagine that somehow children are being oppressed by this, then you'll reject it, which is what our detractors do. And that's because they don't really know. They just don't. They don't come across this sort of, they can't see the benefit. So I suppose, yeah, so that is why. But that's in terms of behavior. Then there's other things that they wouldn't necessarily want to deal with, I suppose. I mean, I'm, very outspoken, and I've got a very clear vision for the school. And I don't pander to lots of different parents' wishes. And what I mean by that is, one parent says, oh, I like this, but I don't like that. And another parent says, oh, I like that, but I don't like this.
I mean,
and so then, as a head, one can be running around, oh, I'll please you now, and I'll please you then, and then I'll try and please you over here. Oh, you don't want to wear the shoes, it's okay. You don't want to wear the tie, it's okay. Oh, yes, I understand you've had a problem. I don't do that. It's the same rule for everybody.
So I mean, you mentioned this in the chapter about homeschool contracts, and also talking about parents not exactly being feckless, but not getting to the standard that you might expect and the school might expect of the community, in the sense that they're trying to follow through, but you expect parents to follow through 100% in that homeschool contract. Do you think that has implications for the community? Do you think the community needs this kind of supercharging from the school because they haven't got it at home, or is it more nuanced than that?
Well, you used the word feckless. I don't know why you said that.
Well,
I certainly didn't use that word. In fact, I talked about being a personal trainer, because being a parent is really hard for everyone.
Yes.
And it's not just for this community, it's for everybody. As I said earlier, all children benefit from a structured environment, and sometimes parents choose not to give them that structured environment. Now, obviously, parents need to bring up their children as they want, and we may not be the right choice for every parent, because every parent won't necessarily take to the kind of structure that we've got here. But they're not feckless. They just don't believe in what we believe in. Right.
But a lot of children who present to you, as you said, it's quite interesting in the book. You have a lot of problem children, despite having a lottery system, which I'll come on to in a minute. They do present big problems, which may have come from the parenting at home, or the environment that they've been brought up in, or the lack of structure or follow through. In that sense, do you think you provide that where that isn't at home? Let's put it that way around.
I think some parents struggle with providing the right kind of structure at home. But it's not for want of trying. I mean, I think they're trying. It's hard being a parent. It's also hard being a parent when you've got 2 jobs and you've got 5 children. I mean, they're not feckless. They're trying. It's hard.
Okay. So you have had parents that push back quite hard, and you have had this in the book in terms of what you call the media circus about the lunchtime thing. Do you think you could have handled that better over the summer?
Well, I say what I think, and I think I wish more people would, and I don't think that we're doing anything wrong. I think we're doing the right thing. We're still doing that. We're not doing anything wrong. People are attacking us because they don't like us. It's unfortunate. I wish they'd stop.
So in Jonathan Porter's chapter, he mentions you have 360 children and no permanent exclusions at the time of writing, which is quite amazing. What about those families that elect to leave, or there must be some attrition happening?
Well, the version you read was an earlier version.
I agree.
That's been corrected. We have had one permanent exclusion.
Right, since then.
So there has been, well, not since. I don't know. I mean, there has been one permanent exclusion. So
he did say at the
time
of
writing. There are some
writing.
families who choose to leave. I talk about them in my chapter. You know, one boy didn't like the food. One other mum wanted her son out because she wanted to buy her own trousers. One mum wanted her phone back. The children were not badly behaved. You know, it's not the case that the children who have left, there have been some children who have left, children who've been top of the year because they have been moved out because of the council. Often that happens.
Yes.
So we've lost a number of children because the council has moved them out of the area, moved them out of London. And so there's nothing they can do. Others, you know, the reasons I've suggested, but it's not because they're badly behaved. That just isn't happening. Because our systems are so tight, nobody's really badly behaved. The systems don't allow them to be really badly behaved. We have some naughty children, but the systems, the reason why I say they're naughty and that's it, as opposed to really badly behaved, is because the systems won't allow them to ever be really badly behaved. So we don't have anybody kicking off or being really rude, or it just doesn't happen, ever. And I know that's hard to believe, because in a normal school that's kind of normal, but It just doesn't happen with us. The kids are really grateful and lovely and kind, and they thank their teachers for their lessons. They go out of their way to help other children, to help the teachers. They give appreciations at lunch to thank their teachers and to thank other children. Thank you for lending me a pen and so on. I mean, I know it is hard to believe, which is why I keep, what do we always say is, come and visit us, come and see and come and talk to the children. It just isn't the case that we don't have any badly behaved children, despite the fact that they come from challenging backgrounds.
Maybe it's because you neutralise the emotive aspect of the behaviour policy. Because when I went to school, which is a very, very, very tough grammar school, you'd be beaten for the slightest infraction, and absolutely have a ton of bricks come down on you. It did not work.
Right.
It did not work because people just upped the ante or subverted the system because there was such emotion put behind those sanctions.
There is no emotion, and not only is there no emotion, the children like it. They get up and give appreciations to their teachers. Thank you for giving me a detention because it's taught me how to do things better. They know that we're trying to make them into better people, and they are trying to make themselves into better people. We do a lot around buy-in, so helping the children to see that we are on their side and that we're working with them and that we love them.
So there's an underlying civics and humanities thread that goes through.
Well, this is during
tutor
time and things.
Yes, but I mean that is sort of part of your curriculum in a sense. It isn't within the actual laid out things, but that sort of ways of going about things, those mores, are there behind everything.
Yes, and any conversation we would ever have with a child, we'd be explaining why something is the case. We're always talking about the why and the how, always. Children know there isn't a single child in the school, and I guarantee you there isn't a single child in the school who doesn't believe that we're on their side. They get annoyed, they get frustrated. In the moment, they might get angry about something, and then afterwards they go, yeah, you're right, miss. Thank you. Thank you for disciplining me. Thank you for showing me the way. That's what they say. And again, I know it sounds unbelievable, but what I would say to anyone listening is you just have to come and see, which is why we are open anytime to anyone. Now, there's no other school in the country that can claim that.
That is transparency.
We are totally transparent, and we're open at any time to anyone. Any family wants to come and visit us at any time, they can drop in and they can come and see us. We give them guides, children, who take them round. They take them into every single classroom. There isn't one classroom that isn't, when you go on tours sometimes in schools, you don't go down corridor D, but you do go down corridor A. That doesn't happen here. Every classroom is open to everyone, and you go in there without an adult present. I mean, the teacher is teaching, obviously, but the children are taking you round, and the children are telling you what they think. So, to be honest, I mean, we've had loads of tours, 5 or 6 tours a day. I don't really know what the children are saying. I mean, I get feedback from the visitors, but I don't know what they're saying. They're saying whatever they want to say. So I would encourage you today, please do come and stay for lunch, talk to the children, ask them what they think about school, because they'll all tell you.
So I want to ask you about the lottery. You're chosen by lottery. Yeah, and that's from outside. It's a thing. Well, the one thing that people have been talking about, people have suggested that lottery screens out those who aren't really going to try because people self-elect, and to try the hard work. And students and parents will deselect themselves or might be forced to leave because they don't agree with the high expectations, no excuses, and you end up with a selective set, and it's a kind of informal gatekeeping. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know what you mean, because it's the normal admissions process that people use in Brent. So you have... So
it's common to the whole of Brent?
No. What I mean is you choose first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, and then they're given the highest up school that they can get. So some people get the fourth choice, some people get a choice they didn't put down at all, some people get their first choice. We do not have all of our places given to people who have chosen us first at all because of the lottery. Because all of those people who have chosen us go in to the pile. So people are chosen who picked a sixth, for instance. Mm-hmm. And if you picked a sixth, you're not really interested in coming here. Yes. So actually, there are a number of families who've picked us first who don't get a place because the places go to somebody who's picked us 5th or 6th or 4th and don't really want to be here. So no, that's not the case. Not only that, but certainly for our first couple of years, we had, because there's so many pupils in Brent looking for a school place, we had a number of children given to us who hadn't participated in the process at all. So the parents hadn't even filled out the form.
Right.
They hadn't chosen a school. So that's how disengaged they were. They hadn't even filled out the form. So the idea that we've somehow selected children is just...
Well, it's not that you would somehow doing it. The system is biased towards that in that sense, possibly. But as you've explained...
No lottery system would ever be that, because you throw everybody in. You're not just throwing in your first choices. You're throwing in all of the choices, and that means... The reason why we've got a lottery is precisely to prevent the middle classes from playing the system.
Because there are large waiting lists, aren't there, in other parts of the world for the lottery system.
What do you mean?
For schools, there are large waiting lists to people to get in, to actually push in, especially the charter schools. Their recent reports or
you mean in
research
America?
In America, yes.
Oh, I see. Yes. But that is a totally different system.
That's what I was trying to differentiate for people.
Right. No, because the system here, you have to choose your 6 schools, and then you either the school, it's done by distance, or it's done by lottery. That's the case for any school across the country. It's either lottery or distance. The thing about distance is that can easily be rigged. So any good school has a number of families renting flats nearby
or buying them
and moving nearby so that they can get into the school. And so we all know that catchment areas, prices go up, etc., etc. And it's precisely because we didn't want people rigging that system for us that we went for the lottery option, which is far more. It's a logistical nightmare to make happen, far more difficult. But we decided to go down that route because we figured that one day people would probably want to move into the area to come to this school. I have to say that's not the case now. It's not like we don't have loads of middle class families beating down the door to come in here at all. We don't have any middle class families. They either choose not to come, or for the most part, around this area, they just don't exist. So we don't have that issue now. Perhaps once we get results, if our results are very good, that might change. And I suppose that was the thinking that we had, that one day people will be beating the door to come here, but down the door to come here, but that hasn't happened yet.
You're doing okay. I mean, the narrative about the rich people sort of skewing the system also, but if you read the Icing on the Cake blog, it's quite interesting. He's recently debunked that because he's a statistician, and it'd be interesting if you had a look at that and drill down through that. It's not always the case that's accepted narrative, but it might not necessarily be the case in the actuality. Anyway.
I mean, it's certainly been the case in schools that I've known. I know this because I've seen it happen. I mean, I see families buying flats and I see them renting flats. There's no question that happens. Now, it may not make a huge difference in terms of massive statistics.
Yes.
No, but I certainly see that happening all over the place.
Oh, yes, I've known people.
And we also know in terms of real estate prices. I mean, we all know that around a good school, the prices of the properties go up, and that's happening for a reason, right?
Yes, but that, I mean, I could go into other issues like they might be a great school, but they also have a massive tutor network behind it, private tutor network, which is doing all the work the school isn't. Certain things like that too.
Of course, I'd agree with you.
Happen, yeah.
Yeah. No, sure.
So, do you think, Michaela, would work if you stopped being head teacher? Do you think the systems, the processes are so in place that that if you were to leave, because you're quite charismatic, and we know that if charismatic teachers or head teachers leave, often it tends to fall apart or fall down over time.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that our plan would be to eventually have a chain of schools.
That was the next question I was going to ask.
Right. Okay. So it will necessarily be the case that I will not always be running the school. But the deputies here are incredible, and the way we work, we all learn from each other all of the time. And because we're all learning from each other all the time, I think that we will be in a very strong position when we do have a second Michaela and a third Michaela, and they eventually take over one of those schools. it is true that we have a very specific way of doing things, and we have a specific kind of mindset, which if the person who ran the school did not have that kind of mindset, it would be a very different school. So it would be important. I don't think it would be possible to take somebody from the outside and bring them in to run the school, and for Michaela to be the way that it is.
Well, I mean, that's shown by endless research from way back in the projects in the States, even before schools came in, that if you try and run something or you try and transplant something that isn't exactly in terms of the same context with the same people, it's that's not going to work. I mean, I would agree with that. Are you thinking of having an all-through school?
We had thought about having a primary. The thing about secondary is that we are all experts at being in secondary, and primary is more unknown. We've also found that I used to think that you really had to get them at primary in order to have a proper impact on them, because by the time you get them at 11, it's almost too late. But what we've discovered through doing Michaela is that you can actually have huge impact on children at age 11, and you can really transform them, and you can catch them up in terms of their literacy and their numeracy and so on. You can catch them up chronologically. So we have children who start with a reading age of 6, and they catch up chronologically. Certainly by the end of 2 years, we've caught them up. And we can also change their characters. They can become kinder human beings, nicer to their friends and their families, more grateful, more interested in the world around them, more ambitious, more committed to making the world a better place, and so on. These were things that I did not necessarily think were possible before we had Michaela. But Michaela has demonstrated to all of us what is possible.
So that old Jesuit nostrum of give me a child before they're 7, you've got them for life, doesn't necessarily hold true in your book then?
I would say that clearly the earlier you get them, the better. But it is possible to have such huge impact at age 11, from age 11, that I think we would probably just go for secondary schools now. It works well for promotion for staff here, and it works well because we really know secondaries, and I feel comfortable doing what we know.
This is more of a generalist question. I've got a couple more and then we'll finish. One of the reasons private school pupils, it said, do so well is the old boys network that gives them access to universities and jobs populated by alumni. How would you replicate that? That's the wider world. From the latest research that came out from Boston, from MIT, they've shown that those 6 schools are doing better than the actual public schools in the States. That is, not the indie schools over here, the public schools in the States. But even so, being able to complete a 4-year uni course is beyond 45% of them, and they're not. So in a way, aren't you worried that you may be offering people the world, but when it comes down to it, the world isn't going to give them an open door at the end of it?
I think it would be a mistake to assume that the reason why there's such a high dropout rate at those universities in the States is only because of the old boys network. I think a lot of it has to do with the preparation that they've had at secondary school and primary school, but
I'm not necessarily conflating it. It just came to me suddenly that might be a connection. But yes, go on, please do.
Well, and what I mean by that is that schools are always judged by the results that they bring out. And then they say, well, look, they've got the high school diploma, or they've got the GCSEs, therefore they've done really well, therefore, or the A-levels, and they're going to go off to university. And then, lo and behold, why are they not working out at university? That doesn't make any sense. And that's because exams are not really able to test the knowledge of children properly. And that if schools really teach to the test and teach the processes of the test, then, and they do that well, you can come out with really good results, but actually you haven't properly embedded the fundamentals in the child that will help them build resilience and confidence to be able to survive onto adulthood and through university and so on. So that's where I think the the difficulty is, you look at the results, you think the school's done really well, so why aren't the children doing well later? I think the number one reason why they're not doing well later is because knowledge is power is not necessarily what other schools are thinking. So when you said about KIP, I'm not sure they value knowledge as we do.
Okay, so you think you can buck the system in that sense?
I do think that our children in 10 years, whatever it will be, will excel. And I think they'll be happy. I think that they will be happy because they have found confidence within themselves, and they have self-esteem because they know stuff. And they know how to behave because we've made it so that they have an environment where it's just who they are now. We always talk about climbing to the top of the pyramid, and when you're at the bottom of the pyramid, you do things because you don't want to get a demerit, you don't want to get a detention. But when you're at the top, you do it because that's just who you are. And through being at Michaela, it's a kind of training system to get you to the top. And when you're at the top, you behave, you work hard, you are confident and grateful and kind. Those things like gratitude and kindness, they're so important for success. Because if you're somebody who always has the world on your shoulders, always feeling miserable, always being told that actually life's really hard for you because you're not part of the old boys network, you're never going to succeed because after all you're black and poor, well, then you won't succeed. If you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. That's life. And that doesn't mean the old boys network doesn't exist. Of course it exists. Of course it's more difficult as a black woman and et cetera, et cetera. I'm not denying any of that. But if you go around thinking life is more difficult as a black woman, life will be more difficult. If you go around thinking, what can I do to make it so that I succeed, right? Well, so there's old boys. Yeah, there's old boy network. Fine, right? I went to Oxford. I know what it's like to be a comprehensive kid and a black girl in a university, which I didn't understand at all. I get it. I get what it. I would watch these boys, these public school boys, drinking gin from a shoe in some ridiculous male only, club that they had, and I'd look at them and think, what? Who are these people, right? I mean, of course. I know what it is to be an underdog. I know what it is to struggle in life. I know, but that doesn't mean that you say, "Oh well, it's the old boys network. We can't do it." You gotta galvanize it. You gotta do everything you can to win, because otherwise, well, you might as well give up. What's the point, right?
The other side of the coin is that you have a sort of quite a restrictive behaviour policy within the school, and you have merits and demerits and a kind of meritocracy culture. But it's kind of what happens when they go out into the wider world and there's more nuance, there's more liminality, there's more serendipity, there's more grey areas in life. At the moment, it's all being very structured for them. Do you think there would be a problem as they move on from an environment like that in being able to cope with more uncertain shifting sands in the wider world?
Well, remember, we only have them from 8 in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They're out there during holidays and so on, living life as normal people all the time. They know all about street smarts. They know all about having to negotiate their way through certain sticky situations. They know that inside out. It's more about teaching them how to automatically be someone who can sit up straight, right? How to, just without thinking, you always have a pen with you. Without thinking, you turn up on time, right? When those things are ingrained in you and it becomes part of who you are, that makes life easier for you. Because you're not having to think when you're going to the interview, I must make sure I'm on time, I must make sure I sit up straight, I must make sure that I look interested and I give eye contact and I don't put my hands over my mouth and oh man, I must make sure I know how to dress and must make sure. There's so many things that you have to remember, right? You're not going to remember them all and you will mess up. It's guaranteed. Messing up is guaranteed. But if some of those things have been made part of who you are as a human being, just like those boys who go to Eton, right? They don't have to think about their haircuts. They don't have to think about their shoes. It's just part of who they are, right? We have to do that with these children because it's not part of who they are when they come here. Eventually, it does become a part of who they are. So like I say, I talk to children now and they tell me about what they were like and I'm amazed. I genuinely can't believe that this is the same child, they say, well, you know, miss, I used to, I mean, it happens all the time. And I say, what? You used to do that? And they say, yeah, miss, I did. But I'm really different now.
Do you think, I mean, this is nothing new, it goes right back. It may alienate them from their communities when they go back from school with the uniform and things like that.
Well, you know what? I was just saying this to one of the deputies this morning. It's like learning another language. You learn how to move between worlds. I do that all the time. So when I was at Oxford, definitely, I was having to move between different worlds. You learn how to speak different languages. And actually, that makes you resilient. That makes you confident. And
so
capable.
You can register for wherever you are. Your register changes.
You know how to change the way you are depending on who you're with.
So perhaps maybe that's not been made explicit to these children before. That is the game you have to play if you want, in a sense, to get where you want to get to. I mean, because in a sense, that sort of takes away from what you were saying before about the person you are, because the person you are has to change between worlds.
But I'm talking about basics like turning up on time, right? I'm talking about basics like being able to sit up straight, right?
Okay.
That's what I mean about, you know, who you are. I'm talking about basics like valuing homework, valuing kindness, valuing gratitude, and thinking, you know, understanding that if I'm a grateful person, I'll be a happier person. And so I need to notice just how lucky I am in life, which is why we would never concentrate on the idea of the old boys network. We tell them all the time, you've got serious competition out there and you don't know what that competition is like.
Do you think those values aren't in the communities they're coming from?
The values, which values in particular?
Sitting up straight, you know, being able to present yourself, being on time, punctuality,
I
all
think
those
that
things.
at other schools, they are not necessarily taught those things.
Right, in other schools. But some families seem to have those as a natural addendum to what they do.
Sitting up straight isn't necessarily something that you teach your children at home. You know, you're not necessarily, you're on the sofa. It's not necessarily you're at a desk, come on, sit up straight.
I know some families do that.
Okay, well, I wouldn't necessarily say that the family environment lends itself to that, because actually you're playing with your toys or you're chatting to your brother or whatever. It's a different environment.
I'm making a more general point. The more general point I'm making is that doesn't. It seems to me that those communities don't seem to understand that these particular things are important to be able to get on in that sense. So you have to make them explicit within, Michaela.
Although there you go again saying those communities. I wouldn't necessarily say that. I'd say there are lots of communities, ones that you might not necessarily
very
think are like
diverse
this.
within London.
I don't think it's restricted to one particular community.
I'm not mentioning one particular community.
Right.
I mean, communities, I did say.
I would say that this is just the case across humanity, and in particular nowadays in the 21st century. Sometimes we don't necessarily value those things. And in particular, if you're a child who hasn't been high achieving all your life, who hasn't been constantly buoyed up by the fact that you're winning all the time, right? So you feel confident because you're just always at the top, so that's okay. Because those children will always be okay in schools that aren't as structured as ours is. Everybody else isn't okay. You know, those bottom set kids, they just flounder because they can't. Their self-esteem can't take the knock, the knocks, the hundreds of knocks that their self-esteem gets all the time because they don't know anything, because nobody's structuring anything around them, because nobody's helping them, which is why we believe it is such a huge act of love to give them that discipline and that structure. Because, you know what, that discipline and that structure may not exist at some of those private schools, but it doesn't matter so much for them because they'll be okay because they've got the old boys network.
Okay. I've already asked you what your intentions are in the future. Do you think this will scale? Do you think this will scale up? You've got 360 kids now. Do you think you will have problems with scalability, scaling up?
Oh, I see, just within the school.
Yeah.
So that's a really good question. So I've always said if we can make it through to the end of year 9 and still hold it the way that we want, then I think we will see it through. And as you know, as an ex-teacher, year 9 is the notorious year. So that was why I thought that. Also, by the time you get to year 9, you've got quite a number. You've got 360. So you can feel it in the building, and you've just got a larger number. When you've only got 120 children and you've got hardly any staff, it just is a much easier thing. What I find from the visitors who've been in year 7 and come back in year 9, they say, yeah, there are more children here, but it's essentially the same. The corridors are still silent. The children are still walking in single file. They're still looking up and saying, good morning, good afternoon, miss, and so on. So in that respect, we are very much the same as we were. Whenever I would visit a new school, and when they just have year 7, I'm always looking for the systems. I'm always looking for the details that are missing. Because if I can spot the details, I know that by the time they have year 9 or 10 and so on, it will fall apart. And that the only reason why it looks good at the moment is because they've only got year 7. So a number of people would come to see us and say, well, you've only got year 7, you've only got year 7. And if you don't have the knowledge of how a school works and those kinds of details that you're looking for, then you would just conclude, well, you've only got year 7. But if you have that knowledge and you're looking at those kinds of details, then you will see that the systems are tight, and as the systems are tight, the systems will scale. And all of our systems, whenever we make any decision, we're always thinking not only about scalability, but about sustainability. And we're also thinking not just about this school, but about a Michaela 2, a Michaela 3.
Yeah, but there is also puberty to come.
Well, that's what I mean about year 9.
Yes.
Right? That's
yes.
why
You're
I
on
say
the
it's
edge
the
of
end
that.
of year 9.
Yes.
And, the year 9s are doing really well. So you're absolutely right. You have to see that through. We're only just partly way into year 9. We've got to see that right through to the end of year 9. But I think once that's done, you see, when they move into year 10, it's a different ball game. They're focused on GCSEs and so on. So that's why I've always said I'll make that judgment at the end of year 9.
Okay. So the last question is, Dr. Ben Laker's report recently on head teachers in the Harvard Business Review, he sort of pinpointed 5 types of leader that would turn around a failing school. That's not the position you're in because you started from scratch. But he talked about the surgeon, the soldier, the accountant, the philosopher and the architect. Which one are you?
So what are the options? Go on.
Surgeon, that's someone who moves. Have you not read this?
No.
It's someone who moves in and cuts out and chops everyone away. Lots of exclusions. And
right.
They make a small, very, very immediate effect, but over a long time it falls away again.
Right.
And the soldier who comes in is very sort of regimented and all. There's the accountant who's concerned with more the monetary factors. The philosopher who thinks a lot about things that doesn't do much in terms of having shaped the school. And the architect who actually builds in the structures that actually sustains the school through the longer term, despite it not going up too much at the beginning, and then that is apparently the most effective. I thought you might have read that.
No.
So would you bracket yourself in any of them, all of them, or none of them, or would you have another label you put on yourself about what you are in terms of what your style is?
I don't know what my style is. I mean, when I listen to all of that, I think, well, you need that, and if you're taking over a school, you need to be doing all of those things. So, I mean, the cutting out bit, well, you would definitely need to cut out some bits, but you would want to restructure and rebuild in terms of the architect. So I don't think you can take over a school and turn it around without doing all of those things. So it would be odd to suggest that anyone was doing just one of them, because otherwise the person would fail. If they did that, if they only did one, they would fail at turning around the school. We, of course, have not turned around a school, and turning around a school is a far more challenging job, and I take my hat off to colleagues who have done that. It really is. I went to visit St. Thomas the Apostle in Peckham, where I used to teach over the half term, and Mr. Connolly, who runs it there, is just extraordinary what he's done. Just extraordinary. As I say, I really bow down to those heads who manage to turn around a failing situation, because it's really hard. And I mean, we have our challenges as well in setting up a brand new school, but I do think it's easier. I suppose what's hard with us is that we are doing things so radically differently, and so it's hard, for instance, with people with Ofsted saying, oh, well, you've got to see what Ofsted say. And I'm thinking, no, don't listen to Ofsted. And if they give us an outstanding, I'll still be saying, don't listen to Ofsted, because that's not what's important. In fact, it's so important not to listen to them for the very reasons that you said, because you don't want to be distracted by your goal and your vision, which should include the children and the teachers. So, I mean, the kind of person I am, I don't know. What am I? I mean, I don't know. I have a vision for the school. I have a vision that is shaped very much by the staff, by my deputies in particular, but also by the rest of the staff. I talk to the staff a lot. I like getting their feedback.
So is there one word that you could summate?
One word? I need one word.
Yes. Go on, try.
I don't know. I don't have a word. I don't have a word. I don't have a word. I don't have a word.
Maybe it's something for you to reflect on in the future then.
I mean, I'm, I've always said all my life I'm a little bit crazy. So, and I do think that Michaela has required somebody a little bit crazy at the top, because it's required somebody a little bit crazy to make the radical decisions that we have made, and to be happy to carry that forward, because it's a risk, isn't it? And understandably, most people are not willing to take that risk, whereas I am.
Katharine Birbalsingh, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.